over headlines where headlines are served me.
Welcome everybody, either welcome back or welcome to Bourbon Over Headlines, where your headlines are served neat. And today, we're heading to the Mid-Atlantic, the mid of the Mid-Atlantic. We're going to Baltimore, and specifically, we're going to Baltimore, which is in Maryland. I meant to say that the other way, but that's all right. We're going to Baltimore today, home of the Orioles, home of the Ravens, and a bunch of other things. So pour yourself a glass, light up your cigar if you have it, sit back, and let's enjoy going to Baltimore. So, first of all, for those of you, if you're your first time, welcome. Hope you're going to enjoy this. So, what I do is I take articles from old newspapers, from usually the 20s and the 30s, read them, see what's going on back then, see what would happen today, whatever. So, let's begin. First one is, wins high honors as bee catcher. Bee catcher. Head of state group balls the most insects in 3 minutes. Catching bees. Now, I know beekeepers. Bees are a vital and important part of the ecosystem. They do more than honey. They pollinate plants. They do everything else. I completely understand that. But it takes a special kind of person to want to catch bees. Okay? All right. Baltimore, Maryland. Let's see what we got here. Howard Johnson of Centerville, the president of the Maryland State Beekeepers Association. Mr. Johnson, hope you're doing well with that. Divided honors and contest at Somerset today. Him and another guy got it. One guy got more bees, the other guy will find out. President Johnson proved to be the best bee catcher, while Mr. Kelly proved to be the best in the theoretical contest. So one guy actually caught the bees, the other guy going thinking about catching bees. I guess we're going to find out. The contest featured at the annual summer field day for the association, was attended by approximately 100 members and others. 2 teams of 7 members participated. So 100 people in the members. That's a big number for a bee club back in 1920. So they took 2 guys took top honors. Guy caught a bee catcher. Tell me how many. Let's find out. Is the bee catching test. Each participant held a wide-mouthed bottle in one hand, and with the other hand caught bees in front of the hive. Oh, they were in front of the hive. That's intelligent. Let's poke the bee's nest, okay? At the end of 3 minutes, the period agreed upon, it was found that President Johnson's bottle contained the most bees, as he had not been stung. Bees must love this guy. He wasn't stung. He stayed in front of a beehive catching bees and not got stung. Oh my God. Do not do this as a TikTok challenge. I don't want anyone doing a social media challenge where you stand in front of beehives and try to catch bees, because I don't know if anyone's allergic. Do not do this. Please don't do this. But I would love to see this done. In today's world, find a beehive. Don't hit it. Just catch bees around the beehive flying around. There's always bees flying around the beehive. They weren't allowed to wear a veil or other protection. And every man stung was automatically... So if you were stung, you were disqualified. So you had to catch the most without getting stung. That's impressive. I don't care who you are. Going around bees, not getting stung and catching them, that's impressive. If you're stung, you're out. That's a hell of a way to run a contest, isn't it? So, congratulations, Mr. Johnson, catching the most bees. I would not do that today. So, now, that's story number 1. We're going on a beautiful start. So, a little bit about the city of Baltimore itself. The Port of Baltimore was founded in 1706 as a way to funnel the tobacco into the European cities, because it was where the tobacco was coming from the Carolinas, coming from Kentucky and stuff. It was a great way to get it there. Okay. So it was a great way. Battle of Baltimore. Okay. So Baltimore as a city, the town of Baltimore was founded in 1729. At one point, the Second Continental Congress moved from Philadelphia to Baltimore, as Philadelphia is being overrun. So technically, if you want to split hairs, it was the capital of the young United States for that time frame. It was several months where it was the capital of the nation, because the Second Continental Congress was holding meetings there. Was it an official capital? No. It's one of several towns. Like in 1812, there was a town that was a quote capital for a day because of James Madison had to run away, go there, and come back. Yeah. When the White House was getting burned. Speaking of the War of 1812, the Battle of Baltimore and Fort McHenry. Now, if you're not American and you're watching this, this is the battle, and this is the fort that inspired Francis Scott Key to write the poem that became the Star Spangled Banner and America's national anthem. If you want to know, that's what happened. So, he was on a boat. This is another story. He was on a boat watching the battle. I think it was a naval ship watching the battle. Overnight. You know, the flag was still there. Because after the bombardment and after everything else, when everything subsided, the flag was still standing, which meant the fort had not been taken. So, rockets, red glare, all the bombs and everything bursting in air. That is where that comes from. The Battle of Fort McHenry, which is the Battle of Baltimore. Fort was still there, the flag was still there, and we have a national anthem with the bombs bursting in air and the rockets, red glare. So, also, anyone here ever played Monopoly? Anyone? Monopoly? We all love it. We all love to hate it. So the B&O Railroad, you know, the railroads in Monopoly. Many people strategize to get the railroads. The B&O Railroad stands for Baltimore and Ohio. It is the oldest railroad in the country. It was founded in 1830. Okay? So the oldest railroad in the country is also now lived forever in Monopoly. Also, I'm going to ask everybody a question. Comment below. I know you're not doing this live, but you're going to find out. But everybody, we all know about Ellis Island in the 1800s, 1900s, where immigrants went through. Can anyone name me the hub that had the second most immigrants go through? Now, obviously, I'm doing Baltimore, so of course the answer is Baltimore. But anyone know it was the second? Now think about this. Baltimore immigrants came in was second behind Ellis Island in immigrants at this time frame, which is quite amazing. It's right behind Ellis Island. So it was named after Cecil Cavalier, the second Baron of Baltimore, not Lord Baltimore, the second Baron of Baltimore is where the city was named after. He was the founding proprietor, one of the founding proprietors of Maryland, so you're going to name it after him. The first printing press was in 1765, again, before we were even a country. That equipment, the first printing press equipment that came over, was used to do Maryland Journal and the Baltimore Advertiser, the first early newspapers. Okay. Now, I'm going to ask everybody a question. Of course, we know the answer, but which city established the first post office system in the United States? What we know as the United States. New York? Boston? Anyone? No, Baltimore in 1774. It established the first postal system. Also, the first water company was established in Baltimore in 1792. The Baltimore Water Company. 1792, first water company in the country, the first postal system in the country. 1770 before we're technically a country, but the first postal system and the first water company, Baltimore. Baltimore's got a bunch of first. So, let's do that. 1904. Now, I mentioned this before, and this keeps coming up. You have to remember, a lot of early cities, a lot of the places were built with wood. Yes, there were brick chimneys and there were brick. Usually the government buildings were brick and stone. But a lot of houses and a lot of businesses, unless they were in the stone buildings or the brick buildings, they were wood. And from about 1860 to about 1910, maybe a little later, maybe the 1920s, the latest. But around 1910 is when it started, when there were fires over the place. Cities burned. We had the Great Baltimore Fire in 1904. Okay. It took out 1,500 buildings and 70 blocks. and it took $150 million in damage in 1904. Now, everybody, let's pull out our inflation calculators. $150 million in 1904 is what in today's dollars? It is $5.628 billion worth of damage in today. Think about that. $5.6 billion in damage in today's dollars. It's a lot of damage. Of course, it rebuilt. We did what now. Baltimore. How many people do you think we were in Baltimore? 9 million? No. In 1920s, which is what we're in, it's around 730,000. Currently, it's around it's 570,000 So it's gone down over the century. Kind of stabilized lately. There was an exodus in the also, when we think of Baltimore, we think of a lot of things. I thought it's the Charm City. It's a lot of things. But what I don't think of is beer. Don't think of Baltimore brewing beer. Now, it had 2 brewing companies. It had the National Brewing Company, which is the more famous one. Now, in 1940, the National Brewing Company created an American icon. It didn't know it was an American icon at the time, but it created an American icon. You know what that American icon is? That's right, it's the 6-pack. The 6-pack. Now, also, its most famous, 2 most famous beers are the National Bohemian. So everybody, let's go into it. Let's do the fandango. Let's do the fandango. Thunderbolt of lightning, do the fandango. Yes, let's all sing Queen. Let's all sing Bohemian Rhapsody. It's called the Nat Bow. You can still find merchandise in the area. Also, Colt 45 was made by the National Brewing Company. They're both still made. They're just not made in Baltimore anymore. Quick aside, the Colt 45s, the baseball team, which is now the Astros, weren't named for the Colt 45 alcohol or malt liquor or whatever. They were named for the gun because they were in Texas and they're going to name it after a gun. Okay. All right. So, sports. Big part of Baltimore. We got the Orioles. We got the Ravens. We got... Used to have basketball teams. Everybody. Ton of sports stars. Also, it has a second leg of the Triple Crown, which is the Preakness Stakes, which has been run at Pimlico since 1873, and the Maryland Jockey Club has been around since 1743. So that race has been around for a while. So let's go back. Speaking of famous people from Baltimore, we got a story about people for the Hall of Fame. Not the Baseball Hall of Fame, not the Football Hall of Fame. The New York University Hall of Fame. The University of New York University. Now, this says you got Mark Twain, Grover Cleveland, and Edward Everett Hale, which I don't know who Edward Everett Hale is, but the New York University put these people in the Hall of Fame. Of course, we all know who Mark Twain is. Samuel Longhorn Clemens, real name Mark Twain, famous American author. Grover Cleveland, president. Yes, Grover Cleveland, the president, who is now a trivia question answered. Besides the current president, he was the only other president to serve 2 non-consecutive terms. Grover Cleveland. It was Grover Cleveland that did that? Yeah, it was Grover. Also, Grover Cleveland Alexander, famous baseball player, was named after, of course, Grover Cleveland, the president. So other nominees announced were a bunch of people I never heard of. John Chandler Harrison, Francis, just probably some people who did some stuff for New York University. John Quincy Adams. John Quincy Adams was named. Okay, I don't know why you're not waiting till 1920 to name John Quincy Adams as part of the New York University Hall of Fame. President in the 80s. He was a president almost 100 years before that. But, so speaking of famous people from Baltimore, we're just going to go through a couple real quick. From or lived in Baltimore or associated with Baltimore. So the mayor, William F. I think it's Browning, was mayor the entire 1920s except for from 1923 to 1927, where Howard Jackson was. So Browning from 1919 to 1923 was mayor. He lost re-election in 1923 to 1927. Then he came back from 27 to 31. So he was mayor. Howard Jackson was mayor of that. So Edgar Allan Poe, of course, lived and died in Baltimore. He's buried in Baltimore. Now, Baltimore Ravens football team. They are not named after the bird. They are named after the poem by Poe. They might be named after the bird, but it's kind of cool to think they're named after Edgar Allan Poe and the Raven, because you gotta quote the Raven nevermore. A couple other famous people that we might have heard of. Tori Amos, which is a singer, songwriter. Some NBA players here. Let's just go through it. Some Carl Anthony, Muggsy Bogues. Two famous ones at the top of the rap. I think there's a couple others. I just wrote those two down. Now, Cab Calloway was raised in Baltimore. The famous band leader was in the Blues Brothers movie, Minnie the Moocher. Yeah, him. Here's an interesting. All of us of a certain age remember Elmo, right? Tickle Me Elmo, Elmo, Elmo. Now, the guy who was best known as the Elmo portrayer, Kevin Clash, born and lived in Baltimore. Yes, that's right. Born and lived in Baltimore. Frederick Douglass lived in Baltimore. As a kid, he learned how to read and write. W.E. Du Bois was the founder of the NAACP, associated with Baltimore. Thurgood Marshall, the first African-American SCOTUS, which is Supreme Court Justice, Supreme Court of the United States. Rick Ocasek from the Cars. Pat Sajak, the longtime host of Wheel of Fortune. We all love Pat Sajak. Babe Ruth, who might be the most famous person associated with Baltimore. And there's a legend, not sure if it's true, there's a legend that in Camden Yards, Perrin Baseball Park, in the outfield, was Babe Ruth's childhood home, where he was born and grew up, or at least either the home or the bar, whatever, something associated with Babe Ruth was supposedly in the outfield. Mine got burnt down by the fire, but supposedly he was in the outfield. Somewhere in the outfield of the Camden Yards is where Babe Ruth lived at some point. Also, everybody, remember, you can't hassle the Hoff, especially in Baltimore, because David Hasselhoff was born in Baltimore. Yes, he was. So that's some names from Baltimore. So, speaking of bourbon over headlines and whiskey, we have a headline: heavy whiskey withdrawals. Now, does that mean we're having people withdrawing from drinking whiskey, or what? Let's find out together. 110,201 gallons taken out of here in April. Most of it was shipped. There were 110,201 gallons of whiskey withdrawn from the federal bonded warehouse for medicinal use. Yeah, that's right, medicinal whiskey. Grandma sipping medicine. Grandpa sipping medicine. It was actually used for medicine. This is the only way in the 1920s where you could actually have whiskey or alcohol. Now, this is how some people tried to skirt prohibition, drinking more medical. Now, federally bonded means the federal government. The federal government said this is okay for medicinal use. This is the whiskey. It's okay for this type of use or whatever it is. That's what it was. Now, the reason why this is in the Baltimore Review is because of the big withdrawal, only 21,888 gallons were taken out by Baltimore or people from Baltimore. The rest went out to New England and the Mid-Atlantic states. So that would be Virginia, Carolina. Yeah, Carolina's really south. So Virginia, maybe Pennsylvania, stuff like that, Mid-Atlantic. The majority going to New York and Pennsylvania. There we go, Pennsylvania. There were several large withdrawals from Pennsylvania towns. So a lot of these people, who knows if it was really used for medicine or not, but it was withdrawal. The state prohibition director Dodson expects that the withdrawals will be reduced considerably this month because druggists have been cut down to withdrawals of 100 gallons quarterly. So they cut down on it because they knew that's what was happening. They knew people were asking for whiskey. The druggists were ordering whiskeys not for medicinal purposes, for people to drink. So their way of doing that was saying druggists can only do 100 quarters quarterly. 100 gallons quarterly, which is still a lot. 100 gallons. If we say a gallon of milk, try 100 of those. And that's your whiskey. We're just stocked with famous people today. So we're stocked with famous people, stocked with a lot of things. Dr. Famous People. So another famous person, Sir Arthur Conan Doyle. Yes, we have Edgar Allan Poe, who's considered the father of the modern mystery, and we have Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, who might be the author of the most famous detective in the history of the world. They're still doing Sherlock Holmes stories today. I'm a big Sherlock Holmes fan. I love Sherlock Holmes. So, headline: Conan Doyle saves actor William Gillette. Maybe it was a close shave for him. Sounds like it was a close shave. Had plans of the British Embassy. William Gillette, the actor who was in London when the war was declared. So this is from 1914. So it's a little earlier than 1920. I tried to spread it out today, but not everything's from the 20s. This is 1914. So what event happened in 1914? Some big event happened in 1914. That's right, World War I. So this actor, William Gillette, who was in England or London, was declared, was under surveillance as a supposed spy because he had plans of the British Embassy at Paris in his possession. So they thought he was a spy because he had plans of the British Embassy, which was in Paris. He had plans of those on his person. They thought he was a spy. Only the intervention of Sir Arthur Conan Doyle. So Sherlock, the author of Sherlock Holmes himself, saved them from jail. The American actor, William Gillette, the American actor, this was a close shave for him, had been stopping at the retired London hotel, at a retired London hotel because of depleted funds. So a hotel for people that, detectives who, he couldn't get home. War broke out, he couldn't get home. Detectives who broke into the room, rummaged through his private papers and found the embassy plans. They were confident that they caught a German spy. Though the author of Sherlock Holmes explained that the plans were part of his play Diplomacy, which is scheduled to appear in. So Conan Doyle says these aren't the real plans of the embassy. This is for a play called Diplomacy, which kind of ironic that you have a play called Diplomacy right after war was declared. So, what to do next? Okay, so this really isn't a headline, it's more of an ad, but the circus is coming to town, folks. The circus. That's right, ladies and gentlemen, we have the circus in 2 days only. 2 days, the circus days of Ringling Brothers and Bourbon Bailey Circus is coming to town. Yes, sir-wee. The Union of Giants, outstanding big combination of wonder show in the world. We got clowns, we got zoos, we got 250,000 pounds of elephant act and 8 giraffes coming to you. Plus we got clowns, plus we got everything else. So come to the circus. May 19th and 20th at the Circus grounds on Edmondson and Batilla Street. Now, the circus has had a lot of issues over the years, especially recently. This is with how it treated animals and how it did whatever. Here in Florida, there's a Ringling Brothers, museum down in Sarasota. I believe it's Sarasota. Yeah, so you can do the history of Ringling Brothers and Bourbon Bailey. Yes, P.T. Barnum was part of Ringling Brothers. Yes, but yes, and there was always tragedies. Yes, but they didn't always treat their animals badly. And for a lot of people, the circus was the only way for them to see these animals. Some of these animals, they weren't in the zoos yet. They weren't this. This was the only way for these people to see animals. Great way to see new things, see acrobats, see everything else. It's a great way for this to happen. Back, especially in the 20s and teens and into the 30s, you didn't have TV. Right, TV, not TV. You didn't have TV. You couldn't go watch Jack Hanna's Wild. You didn't have Jack Hanna. You didn't have the Crocodile Hunter. Oh, crikey. You know, these people didn't have all these animal shows. This is the way you saw exotic animals. If you didn't have a zoo nearby or whatever, the circus would come to town. You get to see entertainment, clowns, elephants, acrobats. This is how you got that. For a lot of years, for decades and decades and decades, this is how people saw these things. For better or for worse. So, the circus is coming to town, folks. So the circus is coming to town. And with that being said, Hangman want more pay. That's the next headline. Hangman asked for more pay. Now you're going, Hangman, yes. This is from England. It's a Baltimore paper. This is really small. But basically, the people, anyone ever seen like people being hanged? I'm not saying like in movies and stuff. I'm not saying actually being hanged. But in movies, they take them to the gallows. They have the person who puts the thing over their head. That's a hangman. Now, In England, they hung people a lot more than we did here. How a lot of people, that's how they administered death penalty for years. Even here we did it, but we went to the, but it was hanging. So hangman, which was a malign profession. A lot of them wore masks. A lot of them didn't want to be known who they were. It was a malign profession for years, but they were also it was also something that had to be done. Had to be done. And they were underappreciated, so they're asking for more pay so they could, you know what, you treat us, we get treated badly. This is an underappreciated, we just want more pay so we can support our families. It's a super small print, but basically, yes, hangmen are asking for more pay from England and from whatever, which is, I completely understand. Like, whether you're a proponent of the penalty or not, I don't care. That's not the point. The point is that whether it's currently or back then, jobs like this, there's certain jobs that are underappreciated. People don't appreciate what they do. They're slightly morbid. A certain type of people have to do it. Those type of people deserve to be compensated, and they need to be compensated at a rate where they can provide for their families, and that's any job basically. So with that being said, that's the end of today's episode. So until next time, be neat, my friends.